Who is your daddy?
I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started with episode 198 of Fathers of the Grind. My name's Tim, here with Dan and Derek.
I want to tell you guys that GameStop is stupid.
All right, tell us why.
Well, I did that buy two, get two free, right? Can y'all see this?
You're way too far away from the screen. Is that Mario?
Brother. Thanks for turning on the light right when I needed it, brother.
Is that Mario Deluxe?
Yes, this is Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe, which I ordered December 25th. I ordered it Christmas Day as part of that buy two, get two free.
Sure.
They took like 2 weeks. They canceled my order for just that game. They sent me the other three. And then they canceled it, but they didn't tell me if they were refunding. They didn't tell me anything. So I call them. I'm like, hey, what's going on? You canceled my game. Like, are you going to send it later? Are you going to give me a refund? And if you're going to refund me, what are you going to refund me? And they're like, oh, we can refund you or send you another game. I said, give me the refund. They're like, yeah, we'll send you $54 back, which I already posted on our Facebook group after this conversation. That means I paid $54 for 3 games. Well, a week goes by, no money, so I call them back, and they're like, oh, yeah, we submitted the request, but I guess our back office didn't process it. So I'm so sorry about that. Let me do it again. Does it again.
You got it done twice.
A week goes by, no refund. I call him back. I'm like, this is the 3rd time I'm calling. So, you know how I am. I'm very blunt and rude. So I was like, okay, I'm over this. Like, this is the 3rd time I'm calling. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, why are you? And then she was saying the exact same thing the other person. I said, no. The other person already did this. How is it not getting processed every single time?
Customer service loves you almost as much as IT. Keep going.
Move. And so they're like, oh, that's because we're submitting the request for the refund, but this game's free. So when they go to process it, they're like, we can. It's free. I'm like, the other 3 people couldn't have told me this? I was like, I already know it was the free game, but again, you charged me $108. I'm including tax. $108 for these 4 games. You were supposed to refund me $54. I still technically paid for this game. The deal was 2 buy 2 get 2 free. Well, we can't refund you because it's $0. Okay, so what are you gonna do? Let me see if this game's in stock. Sure enough, it is. And a day later, I get the game. Like she must have like rush shipped it to me. In so perfect condition, by the way, too. The case is flawless. It looks brand new. It looks like they opened it. And
they might have just sent it to you, like, just give him one.
Yeah. Because there's no scratches. This does not look like it was used.
Did you taste it? I heard the cartridges taste great. Did you taste it yet?
I did. Okay. It tastes really good. But I'm probably going to trade it in anyways. I mean, I only have $777 in store credit right now.
I hope that credit's still valid before they shut down completely.
No. I know, wouldn't that suck, dude? Like, yeah, guys, look at how much money I got. And they announced in like June, all GameStop stores are shutting down. All your credit is frozen.
I think you just need them to stay in business through the end of this year, which I think they absolutely will. That way you can get the new, at least one of the new consoles totally paid off. Maybe both of them pretty well paid off.
I think they're gonna come out at $500-$600 like we talked last week. So I've realistically I'm not gonna have $777 unless I keep trading stuff in, because I'm probably gonna start buying games with the credit too. Like I want to get Neo 2. I want to get Final Fantasy 7.
These are games you should be getting that I can play too. I don't like this GameStop business you're doing over here. I don't.
You didn't offer me any money.
I thought you guys lived in the same place. You guys can just pass the games
do.
around.
Here,
Tim, can you get me another soda? It's getting low.
Here,
you gave him that drink.
Have some beer. Here you go. There you go.
Oh wow, change forms.
We're not good at this. All right.
Change forms.
We are gonna take a little walk down memory lane. We're in 2020, and I want to look back at the 2010s and we're going to go through this week. We'll just do the first half of the 2010s, kind of highlight the main things that happened in each of those years. Some of them were like, oh, I forgot how great that year was, and some of them were like, I thought that year was better. So it's just interesting going through this as I was getting ready for the show. And then we'll each pick our favorite game from those years. So we'll start with 2010 and go through 2014 this week, and then next week we'll round out the 2010s. I think it's fair to say it was a absolutely industry adjusting, changing 10 years. It was amazing, mostly really good stuff.
I'd
Also,
say the second half was better. Sure.
I agree with that. I think second half was better. I think there were also some pretty hilarious moments that we cannot forget. Some pretty bad ones too. So we'll get to some of those as well. So, and we'll close things out with what we're playing. So I do want to hear about stuff you guys are playing recently, if there's anything different. But let's rewind to 2010. I had been married at this point for 6 years, and we adopted our second kid. So it adopted kid number 2. We had bio kid 1, and we adopted our second. So I had the same number of kids, I think, that Teague did that year, or did you already have 3 by 2010?
2010? Yeah, I had 3.
You had 3 by then? Okay. You had more kids than me in 2010. This is how long ago this was. Derek had more kids than I did.
Hey, ask me how many kids I have.
Hey, Dan, how many did you have then compared to now?
The
Dude,
amount
we all
that
know
you
you're
should
a
have, which is
virgin, bro.
0.
Did you say we know you're a virgin? Is that
He's totally a virgin. Like, he
Okay.
keeps talking about this Renee person.
You
I don't even know who it is.
do understand you can have sex and not have kids, right?
Are you serious right now?
No, that can't be true. That cannot be true.
I'm perfect. 3 for 3.
So yeah, 2010 was an interesting time. Let's trying to think what systems I owned. I'm pretty sure in 2010 the only systems I owned were the 360 and the Wii. I think those are the 2 that I owned because I never did own a
We're filming.
PS3.
You gonna walk out?
You didn't have a PS3.
I never did have a PS3.
Oof.
By the end of the PS3's life, I looked back and was like, man, I missed a lot of good stuff. But at least for the first couple years, I never felt like I was missing out on that much.
Okay.
But that was just me. And Final Fantasy 13 never did it for me. I did try that on someone else's, and I was like, I don't love this. So there weren't that many games that were arriving there first that really got me until later. All right. Anyway, so here's some of the stuff that arrived in 2010. We got the Xbox 360S, which I don't remember what that was. Is that like a slick version of that? I'm not sure what that was.
Xbox 360S? Yeah, that was like the slim version.
Okay. And then also the Kinect released that year. That's when Microsoft delivered their camera. I don't know how else you describe it. It was like the PlayStation Eye, but it was the Kinect, and the idea was you're standing in a room and you're moving your body around, mostly dancing games.
Own it except for me.
I never owned it. No.
I got it. My mom got it for me for Christmas.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So even though I was 20.
Its current age minus 10.
20. Even though I was 20 years old, my mom still bought me a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah, she surprised me. I was super excited. I remember, I think it was right when I had started Facebook, so you post everything. When you first start Facebook, you tell everybody everything. Like, hey guys, I'm going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yep. Just
People
made me a
still do
sandwich.
that.
Well, do you
Literally,
remember?
People still.
Do you remember when?
Bad. People have got.
Do you remember when it would you finished a sentence? It would say, Derek Teague is, and then you would finish what it is you're doing. The idea was you're actually giving a status.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. Either that or Twitter. One of those had a thing where you kind of finished a sentence to tell what you were doing. But
It sounds
No,
familiar,
I think Facebook
but
started like that.
yeah. So what did you think about the Kinect? I remember playing it at different parties and things like that, family gatherings. Someone would have a Kinect and oh, it's kind of fun. This little Wild River adventure and whatever.
PSVR. It was cool when I first got it, and then 30 seconds later, I was like, the only entertainment that I got out of it was watching Eli. He was probably 1.5, 2 years old, and he would use it all the time to do the dance games. So we put that song. I forgot what song it is. It's down, 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 and Eli would just shake lower and lower every time. I mean, it was the cutest thing. And he would play that game all the time. We would just watch him dance.
That's pretty fantastic. So yeah, we never did own one. We did have the Wii Fit board, but that wasn't the same year.
It didn't work. It wasn't terrible, but it didn't work very good.
I remember trying to play 2-player Kinect with someone, and you were on the river on a raft, and you had to do things in sync together. And we would do what we thought was pretty in sync. I remember even playing with my son. We would hold hands so we could jump at the same time and stuff to time it. And I thought we were doing pretty well, but the Kinect didn't always read it properly. And so
It wasn't
Yeah.
terrible, but it was definitely, you could tell, first gen tech.
That pretty much sums up that whole section there with the Fitboard and the Kinect, that technology, the Move wands.
Yeah. Move had come out just one year
That's when
before.
the video game industry, not that year, but later on, they realized gamers are fat and lazy. This is just not gonna work.
Yeah, the
Like,
Move
we're
had just come out
trying.
1 year before this, and they were all doing a little something.
That's
So
why
here's
they're
some
like,
noteworthy moments from 2010. Acclaim and Midway and Tecmo all closed their doors that year.
Ooh.
So that was a pretty big year for major, at least kind of historically major companies. They weren't really big at the time anymore. They had kind of all been on the decline, but they were finally done at that point. But there were some pretty significant companies that launched that year. So we had Humble Bundle launched that year.
Oh, really?
NetherRealm was formed and launched that year.
That's my boys.
Niantic formed that year, which they, of course, went on to create one of the biggest mobile games in history in Pokemon Go 6 years later. Respawn formed that year in 2010. Of course, we just talked a lot about Respawn with Star Wars and other games they've made.
Wait, so NetherRealm didn't exist before? I thought they always existed, no?
No, NetherRealm existed after Midway and Acclaim died out.
Oh, right, yeah,
because-
Midway. Okay, yep.
Because
And the NetherRealm is owned by I forget who.
Ed
but I-
Boon.
WB.
WB.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
WB. Thank you. I knew that
Ed
was a big
Boon's
company.
the president, but
Yeah, WB formed that when Midway and
I forgot about the Midway icon popping up on the old Mortal Kombat. Yep, now I'm remembering.
Yep.
Yep.
I actually remember Acclaim and Midway and Tecmo, for that matter, mostly on the sides of arcade cabinets. That's usually where I kind of like when I picture those logos, I see them on the side of arcade cabinets because they had. I feel like wasn't it Midway that did NFL Blitz? Or was that?
I think so. Yeah.
And NBA Showtime, maybe one of them did. I feel like those companies did a lot of those really fun, especially sports style arcade games that I really enjoyed back in the day.
I don't
they
even
were all
really
about
play.
the over-the-top game.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't even really play sports games, but like NFL Blitz was pretty fun.
So fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
NFL Blitz
that was
a
pretty
blast.
fun.
And the other one that formed that year, so we had a whole bunch. Humble Bundle, of course, they're not necessarily a massive development studio. They've developed some things, but they're still a significant gaming company that's around right now. Respawn, NetherRealm, Niantic, and then Zipline. Anybody know what Zipline became just a couple years later?
That rings a bell, but I can't think of what they became.
So Zipline formed, and then they went by a different name, which it's escaping me at the moment. Then they became the Coalition.
Oh, okay.
So same company, they just went by a couple different names.
Yeah.
And so now they are mainly running the Gears franchise.
Gears. Okay. Yep. There we go.
Acquired by Microsoft. So here's some new franchises that dropped that year. Some stuff that really didn't exist before, but they actually released that year. Danganronpa, Darksiders. Darksiders. That was the first Darksiders game. Came out in 2010. Epic Mickey. Although I don't know why I listed that. That's not really a franchise, right? Did they have more than one game?
They did actually. Just
they
two
did?
of them. Just two.
Okay. God Eater, which had God Eater 3 came out this year on the Switch. I'm not sure if it's good, but Hyper Dimension Neptunia, which of course has gone on to have a whole bunch of games in that series.
Sure.
Infinity Blade. Metro 2033 launched in 2010.
Huh.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Which is crazy because we're almost halfway there from when they launched Metro 2033, and now we're in 2020. We're almost to 2033.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ni no Kuni came out that year, so that was the start of at least a 2-part franchise so far.
That's
I think
what
we'll
surprised me is like some of the games you're like, holy crap, they're 10 years old. Like it doesn't feel like they're 10 years old.
Ni no Kuni dropped in 2010. The SteamWorld franchise got going with SteamWorld Dig in 2010, and Xenoblade Chronicles, which I realized was kind of part of a larger, somewhat of a spinoff from Xenogears and Xenosaga. I get it, but Xenoblade Chronicles, as we know, that series came out in 2010.
Oh yeah, so they were like spiritual successors because I think it was like the same kind of developers, same people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Saga Saga
So
was
different.
on the PS2.
Yes.
Which was supposed to be, I think, like a spiritual successor to Xenogears.
Xenogears, right.
And there was supposed to be like 6 episodes. It was supposed to be this
They did
huge long
3,
thing.
I think.
Yeah, they ended up only doing 3 of them.
But I will tell you this, Xenosaga was a much more, it connected to Xenogears in much more obvious ways. Everything from the mechs that you would use and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And even some of the themes in the story. Xenoblade Chronicles, to me, doesn't have anything from either of those franchises. But anyway, that got kicked off in 2010. If you guys had to guess, what do you think was maybe the highest scored game of 2010 on Metacritic and on there's a couple other gamer sites that kind of did an accumulation. Any ideas?
I already know what it is.
Oh, you do? All right. Well, it was Mario Galaxy 2, Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Okay.
It had a
It's like
97.
98 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that game. Really, really great. I still am holding out hope that they'll put out a Galaxy collection on the Switch.
I wish
totally
they
play
would,
those.
because I will admit I wasn't a big fan of the Wii. The only time I would use it is if I could play a game without having to use like Wii controls.
Yep.
So
all you needed for that was that the second player could point at the screen to collect crystals.
Yeah.
And then you could shake the remote to have him do a spin move, but otherwise you were controlling it like a Mario game.
I played Mario Galaxy like for a couple of levels, but that was back when I was like, I don't care about platformers. I think that was when I was starting to decline from that. So I never got into the love that Mario Galaxy got. I was like, it's okay. And then
And did you
Mario
ever play
Galaxy 2 came out, and I bought
Galaxy
it day
ones?
one. I don't even think I ever even played it.
I had the first one, and I think I played like a few hours of it, but like for some reason it didn't click with me. I don't know why. I know that they're really
Probably
popular,
because
but
of the Wii crap.
I mean,
I think the
don't know.
Wii controllers really hurt it. I will say this, as far as Wii games go, it's one of the prettiest, and I think if they gave it like just a quick once over with a little bit of an upgrade, it would still look great on the Switch. And also it had this amazing orchestral music, so they just really upped the ante with the music with that thing. So,
But what I was
pretty
gonna
great.
say is that is a collection I would want. Even though I'm a bigger Mario Sunshine fan, I would actually want the Galaxy games to come to the Switch before Sunshine, just because I haven't really invested any time in them. Whereas Sunshine, I beat it.
Yep. So that was the last we've heard of the Mario Galaxy so far 2-part series. I wouldn't be surprised if they either at some point make a Mario Galaxy 3, or if they just at least release a collection of this, because those were really great.
I see them doing a 2 Odyssey 2 before anything else.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Odyssey took a lot of things out of the playbook of Galaxy, the way that they built their worlds and the creativity of things.
I would
But,
rather have a Mario Odyssey too.
I would too. Odyssey is, other than like Super Mario World and Mario 64, just because of nostalgia, I'll admit.
Yeah.
Odyssey's right up there with those two, though, as my favorite. I think it's my favorite 3D one, or it's tied with Mario 64.
Yeah.
OnLive released in 2010. You guys remember OnLive?
Wasn't that like the first Stadia ever?
Basically,
Yeah.
at least that was the attempt.
Yeah.
So OnLive released that year. I didn't mark down when it was over. I think it only lasted a few years.
Is Stadia rest in peace yet?
No, they'll waste more money on it for at least another year.
Dan Phillips is handing out buddy codes or whatever, so it's still alive.
Xbox Live for the original Xbox was discontinued in 2010. So it was basically 360 or nothing if you wanted to be online on the Microsoft consoles. The 3DS was revealed at E3 in 2010. So the DS was, of course, just absolutely wreaking havoc in the marketplace, selling like crazy. And Nintendo was ready to announce their next handheld device. The Wii was killing it as well. So both their two main consoles were at the top of the world, DS and Wii. They were making so much money. And I just remember that time wondering, like, what are they going to do next? Like, the Wii is clearly targeting a casual audience, and at least monetarily it paid off for them. As a gamer, I oftentimes felt ripped off.
Sure.
For every one great game, I felt like there were 200-300 awful games on the Wii.
Shovelware, they call
That's
it.
just what it felt like. So, and same with the DS as well. There were so many DS games.
It's kind of happening with the Switch too.
Well, the good thing for
Oh.
Switch at least is that it's mostly on the
that bad.
digital store.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not.
It's-
I'm not talking like in the store.
Yeah, if you went to GameStop back in the, even now, I guess in some of them, and you look through the Wii rack, you have to
terrible.
go through so much garbage to get to anything decent.
People were jumping all over that crap.
And I think I've got this next one right. Hopefully this is correct. I believe this is the year that PlayStation Plus launched on the PS3. Was in 2010.
Okay.
So, and that's the first time you started getting bonuses. And at some point, I don't know if it was right away, but at some point they started offering access to free games for as long as you were a subscriber at that point.
Yeah.
So those are some of the main things from 2010. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at some of the major games that released. We talked about Mario Galaxy 2 already, but I'll mention my favorite from that year. Don't hold me to it. Maybe if you ask me again tomorrow, it might be a little different. But for right now, as I glance through a list of some of the best games of the year, I'm sure I missed some, but for me, Red Dead Redemption jumped out as the best game that year. I still hold it in very high esteem. I love that game. I still think it's one of Rockstar's best. So
I went through. That was what I was doing when you guys were texting all that nonsense.
Sure.
I do ignore y'all 99%. I don't even bother reading what y'all say.
We know.
Derek thinks
Between
of
you two, and then there's a group of and I think I've said it before. There's like a group of 7 or 8 guys. I don't even have most of their numbers in my phone, so I don't know who they are. I just know it's Sasan, his little boyfriend Danny, and a few other people, and they talk. It's like a group of girls like gossiping and talking. I hope they listen to the show and get mad at me, because I don't even read 90% of their crap, and they just talk and talk. I'll wake up the next day and I'll have like 100 messages.
Derek, it's no secret that you don't read it, because when we finally get you to respond, you say okay.
Clearly, he thinks of us as a couple of gabbing ladies as well. So,
and it's not like we're just like shooting the crap or whatever. We're actually saying, hey, what time do you want to record tonight? Crickets.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So what I was going to say is I was researching all the years. And so 2010 was actually, out of all the years we're doing tonight, was probably the biggest surprise for me which one I picked. And again, I didn't go through every game, so maybe I missed my true game of the year. But I went through like hundreds of them, and Mass Effect 2 was the only one that stuck out. Now, the reason why that's a surprise, I'm a huge Mass Effect fan, but Mass Effect 2, at the time that it launched, I did not love it. Like, it was the weakest Mass Effect game, obviously, post-launch, too, because I had to have played Mass Effect 3. But, like, it didn't stick with me. Like, I always, whenever we would do conversations about Mass Effect, I would always talk about how Mass Effect 3 was my favorite, Mass Effect 1 was my second favorite, and Mass Effect 2 was, like, distantly down at the bottom.
Right.
Now, I went back and played all 3 of them again. And
before Andromeda, right?
And before Andromeda. And I have to say, Mass Effect 2 is definitely a better game than I gave credit for. My criticisms when it came out were mainly because I didn't like, and I've said this before, I didn't like that you were on this journey to save the universe and you were doing all these like petty, stupid side quests. Like, in order to earn your trust, we're all dying. Why do I have to earn your trust? Like, and you have to go and do these stupid things. So that never made sense to me. But once I got past that and just played the game, the shooting, even the stories, the characters,
so much better than 1 as far as the gameplay goes.
Yeah, and I understand why 1 is the way it is. That's why I always fought for it, because people come in, they played. A lot of people played 2 before 1 because, if y'all don't remember, 1 was an Xbox 360 exclusive.
Yep.
So a lot of PS3 gamers played Mass Effect 2 way before they ever even got a shot at Mass Effect. And a lot of them criticized unjustly because they were, again, taking the game out of context. They were playing it after 2.
Now, what is this?
Yes, and they're like, the gameplay sucks. But it was purposely done like that.
It was more like an
RPG.
It was more like Coder than it was
it was Coder with guns. That's all it was. Yeah. Like, you would shoot beep beep beep, and you could be like 3 feet away from the guy.
What would you shoot again?
Beep beep beep.
Okay,
you're like 3 feet from the guy, and you're like, why did I not hit him?
Yeah,
because you're shooting with a Titan gun that goes beep beep beep.
Yeah. All right, Dan.
Anyway,
what was the game that jumped out at you?
Tangent, but Mass Effect 2 is a really good game.
It's a great pick. It's a classic. Dan, what about you?
So I'm gonna go ahead and say that it should be Final Fantasy 13, but it's not. That did come out in 2010, so it was Red Dead Redemption as well.
Yeah, man.
Because that did not have a convoluted story like Final Fantasy 13. So
yeah, it had one of the coolest stories and a really great kind of, like, the climax of that story for your main character, and then the kind of epilogue type of section where you get to clean up some of the story. You know, some time has passed, but then it also leaves the world open to you to explore and hunt and do whatever else. So I love the way that
Final Fantasy 13. I didn't ever beat it, but I got pretty far in it.
I honestly would love for them to release a trilogy, like a remastered trilogy, so I can replay them again, just so I can have a more fresh perspective.
I mean, you're not gonna like my answer, and maybe you should do, because you are a cheap butt, and just do this like later on. You're not gonna buy a PC, but here's what I really think you should.
I mean,
do.
I have a laptop. I could play them, but that's fine.
Okay. But what I was going to tell you to do is you can also get an Xbox One X. Don't do it now because it's too expensive. You wait until next gen starts. It's going to drop down to like 100, 150. You buy one. All the Final Fantasy games are native 4K. They look really good. They play really good on the Xbox One X. Oh, I say all the Final Fantasy 13 games.
Sure.
So, and I mean, you can, if you have a laptop that's pretty good, it's gonna run those 3 games. So you can pick them up on Steam for like $5.
But there's no trophy. There's no trophies. I get no trophies on the laptop.
God, I really hate you.
So I think 2010, it's fair to say, was, as I looked through the games as well, just like Derek, there's a whole bunch of them. I thought it was a really good year for game releases. 2010 was really strong.
I did want to add to Red Dead though, like I'd have to actually think about it for a second, but like nothing left an impact on me with as far as like towards the end of the game. Not to get into specifics, like that game did. Like I can't think of anything up until that point I played.
Same.
It's like wow.
Well, and I'm different than you guys because I didn't beat the game. I played like a ton of hours, and then I finished it. What, Tim? We were doing the show, so it was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I finished Red Dead. Obviously, it doesn't have as big of an impact. A, because I already knew what happened, and
Sure.
B, it's just old. It doesn't.
You know what? I'm gonna give it a slight spoiler. I'm just gonna talk to you guys about this main moment because it's worth talking about. So if you haven't played it and you really don't want to know, skip ahead about 2 minutes right now.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been warned. All right. So there's a part at the end where the army has finally cornered John Marston in front of his
The
barn.
FBI, right?
Yeah, I think it's, or the Marshals, U.S. Marshals maybe.
Yeah.
So they have like a crew. It looks like maybe 20 plus guys. And throughout the game, you've got this skill, of course, this Deadeye, where you can freeze time and then you can take your time aiming at different headshots. And if you want to shoot hands to knock guns out of their hands, but there's too many. So it sends you into Deadeye mode. And I was still holding out hope, like, all right, here's where the hero does something cool to get out of this, because they all have their guns pointed at him. Yep. And you do the best you can with the Deadeye. You take out a whole bunch of guys, but the game does not give you anywhere near enough time to do it. And Marston dies. There's nothing you can do about it. He gets just riddled with bullets.
Violently, yeah.
I mean, it's very Godfather-esque. Godfather at the at that turnstile thing, you know, on the highway. It's like just like that moment. Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was an incredible moment. I'll be honest with you, I was pretty upset because I love that character. I was like, this can't be true. Like, I think I messed it up. I wonder if there's 2 paths. So I went back and tried it again, and I was like, dude, there's nothing you can do. Like,
nope.
This is the end of this guy.
Which is what I think the end of. Well, so we're still in spoiler. This actually bridges to Red Dead Redemption 2. Does that sound cool?
Yeah, if you haven't played Red Dead 2, mild spoilers. Keep it really general.
So the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, you are Marston again. Mm-hmm. So it's like
because it's a prequel. That's no surprise to folks, right?
So it's almost like that in of itself a redemption.
Yes.
Because of what happened in the first one.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love those 2 games together are just masterful. Yeah. I love them. Okay, let's move on to 2011. Gaming in 2011 was kind of an interesting year. I thought 2010 was a little better though in terms of games, looking back on them. But 2011 had some interesting stuff. One of the biggest hardware moments was when the Nintendo 3DS was finally released, and not to a ton of sales or acclaim. So the DS, like I said, was breaking records like crazy, and the 3DS came out to a little bit of a whimper. It was not
Ocarina of Time though.
It wasn't doing amazing. It did have some really cool games, but then it struggled to get a volume of games out that you couldn't play on the DS to really make a good case for it yet. I remember they did an ambassador program where if you had purchased it within the first 3 or 4 months, then you got access to a certain number of Game Boy Advance and I think a couple of Super Nintendo games or something like that. I forget what it was. But they gave you a handful of ambassador titles to now download, including stuff like Zelda, the Minish Cap, and an old Metroid Game Boy Advance game. Some really cool
some Mario games too.
Yeah, a couple Mario games. So they tried to reward those who were, jumping in early with them. But of course, we all know the 3DS had no trouble recovering and continued to do and has done really well for the next 9 years. So As far as noteworthy moments, though, that was the year they had a pretty major earthquake in Japan that caused a whole bunch of issues with game development specifically. So that hit the gaming world in a weird way because it affected some developers over there. I didn't look up which games were delayed or canceled. I just know that the news talked about, certain developers could not continue or whatever. But I remember that being a pretty devastating thing. Nintendo then, with the success of the 3DS, obviously decided now's a good time to announce the Wii U. So they announced the Wii U. It's so funny that they kind of had, at least at the beginning of those two consoles, 3DS and Wii U, they just really had a hard time. Because both of them were so similar to their predecessor. I think they struggled to really give you the value proposition.
Well, like
3DS was more powerful, and you had a 3D slider, which was like, okay, maybe. And what's up? Do you need something? What? No. Tomorrow. Good night.
He's talking to his wife.
It's getting all dad.
Yeah, my
dad mode.
My son wants something. Close the door. All right. Anyway, the Wii U I think didn't do enough. A lot of people saw the console and were like, "Is this a Wii?" And they just added an iPad.
It was unbearably It is just so bad how they advertised it. They showed just the pad.
I knew exactly what it is, and I liked my Wii.
But regular people just saw a pad, and they were like, the Wii U. Like,
I think the sales speak for themselves there on how well they did.
Because I showed up to GameStop that Sunday morning to pick up my brand new system, pre-ordered a bunch of games.
It didn't come out till the next year, but yeah.
The advertising was terrible.
And guess what? Me and one other guy.
Yeah, exactly. Where with the Wii, you couldn't find it for months and months and months and months and months. So anyway,
there was a good idea there, but they just didn't execute it well at all. Right. In the beginning, for sure. It got a little bit better, but not really because the sales were terrible.
Basically a Switch. Yeah, you can't take it as far, but they just didn't do a good job of explaining it.
Yeah,
and their other thing they did is they screwed up the way it looked. They made it look too toyish, like it's a kid's toy.
That's true. I would actually argue that the biggest mistake was calling it the Wii U. I think they should have given it a completely unique name. What made the Wii was the fact you had these motion controllers and your grandma could stand there and play Wii bowling with you or whatever else. It was a casual console, and the Wii U was kind of the assumption would be, oh, maybe it's an upgraded Wii, but it didn't play anything like it. I know you could still use the remotes and stuff with it, but it just had a very different look and feel, and it was not as much for the casual gamer.
The vibes for the Wii, or not the vibes, but I think the reason why they call it the Wii was supposed to be they were kind of really trying to shove down your throat, we play, us playing.
Yeah, you and me together, and then of course the two eyes are the two remotes. So I totally get it.
And then Wii U is we and then just me. That doesn't even make any sense.
But I think 2011 is a significant year for Nintendo because that started the downturn for the next 6 years, where outside of handheld stuff, they kind of struggled to keep pace. But that was also the year that Sony announced the PlayStation Vita. So there were rumors going all throughout 2009, 2010.
Also did well.
And yeah, I know. But the Vita finally was announced officially at the beginning of 2011. A couple companies that formed that year that are notable, they're just for indie games though. So if you like Shovel Knight, that's when Yacht Club Games formed.
Yeah.
And they didn't release Shovel Knight till 3 years later, but that's when they formed. And then Chucklefish also formed that year, and they've made games that I love, like Stardew Valley and Wargroove. And a couple new franchises that year: LA Noire, Minecraft, of course. That was the big year. I mean, Minecraft had been in all kinds of different alpha phases and things like that earlier, but that was kind of the official wide release, was 2011.
That's crazy.
And also the Toys to Life thing was running hot and heavy with Skylanders that year. Skylanders hit in 2011 as well.
Yep.
So what do you think was there's actually two. There's a tie for highest rated games. You guys already looked this up too?
No, I didn't look up highest rated for any of these, but
any guesses? 2011 games?
Is it Skyrim?
Skyrim's tied for first. Yep.
Nice.
Tied for first with Batman Arkham City.
As
the highest rated, as the highest reviewed game. I love Arkham City. So there you go. All right, so my favorite game.
The weakest one to me too.
Yeah, I liked Arkham Asylum more, but I did like Arkham City a lot. My favorite game from that year, and I do think it still holds up, is Portal 2. I think it was one of the funniest and most clever, really clever usage of environments, the puzzles they had, and of course the actual portals that you use. It was amazing the way that they had you utilize those to solve puzzles. It was also really funny. Having Stephen Merchant voice your buddy Wheatley was brilliant. They had a few other main actors that did some really funny dialogue as well. So I love Portal 2. What did you guys like from that year?
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, so Skyrim for sure. I love that. I mean, obviously it's practically a joke now because of how many times they've re-released the game. But I was unbearably excited for when that came out, and it's still one of my favorite games for sure. A lot of people prefer Morrowind or Oblivion to it.
Do they? I thought Skyrim was generally.
I mean, Skyrim is very popular, but I swear a lot of people do prefer those more. Maybe that's changed over the years, but
we call those tryhards.
Sure.
I was gonna say,
Probably.
I think Skyrim is
playing on my PC,
the more popular
like
one. But when you have like those cool gamers that are like
the PC gamers, PC nerds, right?
Yeah, the ones with their zits on their faces and all that.
But yeah, I want to give a shout out to Dead Space 2 also because that's like a close second for me.
Oh yeah, I forgot that came out that year.
Yeah, Dead Space is excellent. So
nice.
I love that series.
Derek, what'd you like from 2011?
So I went through a long list, and this was probably the weakest year out of the years we're covering tonight. But I went with Mortal Kombat, the reboot. I went based off of not only like the love for the game, but I also thought about it. I was like, what's the game that you remember from that year that you just played a ton of? And it was that game. That was the last fighter that not only did I just go in and beat the story, but I beat the story multiple times.
And which Mortal Kombat was that one?
Playing. It was Mortal Kombat 9.
9.
So that was like the soft reboot.
So, yeah.
Nice.
And that was the first game I ever went to a midnight release to.
And that was the first one that NetherRealm developed, right? Because they had just formed the year before, and they released the following year. They released Mortal Kombat.
Absolutely outstanding game.
Yeah, overwhelmingly positive reception on MK9. People were excited about the direction.
Well, they revived it, and then they basically did like the story of Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3. Like it was super cool. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. And then we move on to 2012. 2012 was an interesting year because all the companies were getting ready to launch some stuff. Wii U, of course, was going to launch this year, towards the end of the year in 2012. And then PlayStation and Microsoft were both prepping their systems and knowing they were probably going to release the following holiday. So 2012 was an interesting year. The consoles that released that year that I'm aware of, at least, were the PlayStation Vita. Came out in Japan, actually, at the end of 2011, but everywhere else in 2012. The 3DS XL, which I would argue is the superior version of the 3DS console outside of the new 3DS stuff that they've got out. And PS3 Super Slim dropped right then. I think this is about the time you started to see PS3 not just catching up with 360, but actually overtaking it in terms of regular console sales. They were just starting to come back on Microsoft.
Yeah. They were starting to be PlayStation again, you know?
Yeah, they really were regaining their mojo at this point in their cycle. And then Wii U also dropped in 2012. Of all those, I currently own a Vita, and I think we've got probably 3 or 4 3DSs in the house somewhere, but I don't own a PS3 or a Wii U. I skipped both of those. So
how dare you?
Have a PS3, bro?
How dare you?
You don't even deserve to be on the show anymore.
That's true. That is very true.
I mean, to be fair,
PS3 was outstanding. Is it at the level of the PS4? No.
360 was better.
Pretty freaking close.
Well,
no, but it's the same story. Like, look, I love my 360. It was my favorite console.
It was better.
But the PS3 had a ton of exclusives that were way better than
arguably the best exclusive that generation.
Looking back on it, it's like, whoa, there was a lot that I missed out on. Thankfully, most of them have been re-released, and I've had a chance to play in various collections and whatever else. Thankfully, but yes, there were a ton that I missed out on. That at the moment I had so much to play on the 360 that I just didn't really sweat it too much. So here's the only new franchise that I could find that was the significant franchise that I could find that was introduced in 2012 was Dishonored. Came out that year, and I believe that is a pretty great franchise. I like it a lot. The highest rated game. What's that?
You sounded like I like it a lot.
I like it a lot. A little bit Dumb and Dumber. The highest rated game of that year, according to Metacritic, was The Walking Dead, a Telltale game. just got rave reviews. It was
Yeah.
kind of a revival of the point and click adventure storytelling
Play the
kind of
final
game.
season,
Makes sense.
kids. Play the final season.
Yep.
You
I loved that game. That won a lot of Game of the Year awards as well. Xbox Smart Glass was announced that year. Do you guys remember
Sure.
Smart Glass?
How's that going?
Sure.
Yeah, it's going really well. It's going almost as well as something that their rival Sony announced in that same E3, Wonderbook. They're both
Oh
doing
man, I remember
they're
that.
both doing great.
That
Wonderbook
E3
was amazing.
it was right in the middle. They were like,
Yeah,
so
they were
Wonderbook.
killing it, and then
They knew
like,
the
"Hey,
next year they were going to talk about
Yeah.
brand new hardware, and they had a ton to talk about. But this year they were like, let's make a book.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was the Harry Potter stuff.
It was
like
the Harry Potter stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So you could make an argument that with this year being a relatively weaker year for Microsoft and Sony, as they were kind of reloading, getting ready to fire the next year, Nintendo should have just destroyed, but
Yeah.
they
Well,
did
that's
not.
the issue.
To be fair,
too,
the 3DS did start killing it this year, though. In
Right.
2012, the 3DS started really taking off.
But the Wii U, like especially power wise, specifically, was like
Yeah.
already like obsolete. Like
Yeah,
'cause
they were
then
like, so
you know,
now it's finally on par somewhat with the 360. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and yeah. So.
Yep. So for me, my favorite game I could think of from 2012, as I looked through the list, the one that jumped out at me that I got the most time in and I had the most fun with was Fire Emblem Awakening. I absolutely loved that game. Don't get me wrong, I loved Walking Dead and some of the other games from that year, but Fire Emblem Awakening, it still might be, as much as I love stuff like Three Houses, I think Awakening still might be my favorite in the whole franchise up to this point.
Awakening is definitely my favorite, but
Yeah,
it's also the first one that I really dove into.
Oh, okay. Well, Derek, what did you like from 2012? What game?
Hands down, Mass Effect 3.
Okay.
One of the best games ever. So.
Better
But
than
the ending. The
better than
ending was
Andromeda?
terrible.
Oh my gosh, the entire game is the ending. I hate everybody.
There's 3 choices and you pick one and blah blah blah.
So I'm at GameStop, right? And I'm trading in my Xbox One X. And so that's a process. Well, anyways, they always do those like little videos and stuff. And they're interviewing this guy. I have no idea who he is, but he has something to do with PlayStation.
Okay.
And he's basically going over his top 5 games of, well, what we're doing, the decade, though.
Okay.
And he gets the Mass Effect 3, right? And the first thing he says, because the guy is like, oh, Mass Effect 3, you know, that ending, he's like, the game is the ending. And I was like, I while she's trading my stuff, and I was like, thank you. I love this guy. I don't know who he is. I did this right in front of the girl ringing me up. I'm like, I love this guy. I've been saying this for like a decade. The whole game is the ending, you freaking idiots.
And she's like, I wasn't even born when that game came out.
Yeah. What's Mass Effect?
What? All right. So that was.
trash.
Oh yeah, Dan. What did you like from 2012?
Well, 2012 seemed like the weakest when I was scrolling through, but I picked Hitman Absolution.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
I was a big fan of that. Blood Money was the first one I actually had ever played, but then I played this one. I was like, this is like way better than
More
Blood Money.
actiony. The shooting was more fun. They did a better
Yeah.
job with it. Yeah.
There was just so much you can do in that game. Shout out to Spec Ops: The Line as well.
Oh, that game was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game kind of shifted the paradigm a little bit from what you normally get from a military shooter.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like was it Hellblade there? Like a little. It kind of takes a page out of that mental health. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I was scrolling through and nothing was sticking out to me really, but.
So I had a hard time picking for 2010 and for 2012. Those were the two that I liked the most. 2013 was pretty decent too. It was 2014 that came across to me as one of the weaker ones, but we'll get to that here in a couple minutes. All right. So that was 2012. Let's move on to 2013. 2013 was an interesting year because we had 2 major hardware launches. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and call it 3. The Ouya came out that year.
Oh, snap.
Don't forget the Ouya. Nintendo also released a new format that October, right before PS4 and Xbox One. Nintendo's like, don't forget about us. And they released the 2DS,
Sure.
which turned out to be, I think, a pretty brilliant move. Let's release a cheaper version minus the 3DS tech. Let's save ourselves some money. And let's give everyone a very easy entry. And pretty much let's just bundle it with Mario Kart 7 and call it a day. And that worked. And I think that kept working for like 6 more years. They kept selling that thing. Before they had to do the new models, the new 2DS, new 3DS. But
well,
anyway.
you might as well take out the irrelevant 3D because what was the point of still having it there?
That's true.
The
The
PS
PS
really use it.
PS4 and Xbox One, of course, also came out that November within a week of each other. So that was pretty significant. But before we get to the releases of those consoles, there's more to talk about with how they were both announced and how Sony and Microsoft took shots at each other, which was pretty fantastic.
It was.
But before we get there, let's talk about some new franchises that came out that year. It was kind of interesting to see these franchises that you kind of forget that at one point they didn't exist. So Injustice finally became a thing that year. Injustice franchise. I believe that was NetherRealm as well.
It was.
So that franchise came to be. Also The Last of Us, which we can now call a franchise because it's had kind of at least one spin-off. Yeah, DLC, but kind of felt like its own little side game with the Left Behind game.
Finish that game, Tim?
Yeah, I played Last of Us and the Left Behind DLC both. Mm-hmm.
You played it on the PS4.
I did. The remastered version, yep.
Okay.
Really liked it a lot. So at first I played and I thought the gameplay isn't my favorite. And the second time I was like, you know what? How about I just play it the way they want me to instead of the way that I want to play it? And I enjoyed it a lot more when I actually kind of did what the game told me to. I was trying to play it more like Uncharted and it wasn't working. So anyway, I enjoyed it a lot more and I cannot wait for part 2 this spring, hopefully. Disney Infinity came out that year. That was their answer to Skylanders from the year before. So Toys to Life was just really kicking at that point. Tons, and every time any game store you went to, or toy store for that matter, just had tons of Toys to Life packages all over the place.
Sure
at this
did.
point. So yeah, there was lots of them.
When did Amiibos start? Do we have a date on that?
15, 16, something like that.
Okay.
I think. Well, yeah. We might get to that because I didn't have that in this first 5 years. So I think it must have been after.
Right. Okay.
That would have jumped out. I think that's pretty major.
Yeah.
Highest rated game of 2013 was Grand Theft Auto 5. Funnily enough, because that game re-released the next year on next gen consoles, it was the highest rated game of the next year as well. But
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I had to skip past that one for the next year. But GTA 5 was the highest rated game of 2013. And one of my favorites of the year, but it didn't quite win for my personal pick. A major publisher and developer, THQ, closed in 2013.
Yep.
So they declared bankruptcy in 2012 and then officially closed its doors in 2013 and stayed dormant for a little bit. We'll come back to them later on this decade. But let's talk a little bit about Microsoft and Sony. So 2013 has arrived. Everyone knows they're going to announce their new consoles. So Sony gets out going first. They decide they're going to announce theirs and reveal the PS4 first. And they announce it. They reveal it, but they don't give us things like price or things like that. They were still holding off on a few key details we wanted. But we knew a lot about the PS4. And then a couple months later, Microsoft has their big event. And I think if they would have done something similar and just announced here's what it is and just given you some details but not everything, they might have been better suited to compete right out of the gate. But instead, they really pulled back the curtain and were almost too honest. And they had the idiot Don Matrick get up and say some stuff that was like, what did he just say? Get a second No, that was Sony who said that with PS3. Get a second job, right?
Yeah.
That's, he didn't say get a second job. Yeah. That was. I'm mixing up my history there. That was Sony. But Don Matrick had some really silly stuff to say.
Something about like Xbox 360. He made like a comment about like anybody who just wants to like stay with their Xbox 360 is stupid or something, or like they'll be irrelevant.
Or if you want to play it was backwards compatibility maybe, and he was like, if you don't play those, just keep your Xbox 360.
Well, it was also the only online, like the system had to be online. You couldn't share games.
So that was in May, and the next month was E3, and I like to imagine that in the Sony headquarters, as they're prepping for E3, they have their stuff pretty much totally ready. They're pretty much ready to go for E3, and they're fine tuning things. And then Microsoft decides to do this. And then I think Sony must have had some meetings like, guys, we've got to do some stuff here. They went ahead and put together all kinds of things to essentially, they just saw that Microsoft had left themselves wide open for a bunch of haymakers, and they took them. They just went for it. Everything from the pricing to how you share games with each other, the really sarcastic video of here's how you share a game, and you handed it to them, It
was a Shuhei Yoshida, and then was it Adam Boyle? I think
that sounds right.
That little video,
Adam Boyes, maybe,
Adam Boyes.
I think the problem with Microsoft was they were so excited. And to be fair, like I know it's easy to crap on them, but to
Yeah,
be
it's
fair,
fun too.
well, and they deserve it to a certain extent, but they were super excited because they were really trying to change how we game. And if people were smart, you don't hear anybody say it now, everything that they were announcing, we're all doing.
And we're all excited about now.
We're all online, like at almost at all times.
But it was too soon.
If you're not online, you lose access to your games most of the time.
Yes.
But everything they were talking about, we're doing now. It was their problem was they were so excited to get it out there, thinking in their heads they're thinking people are gonna love to hear this, but they messaged it in such a way. Even I was not ready to transition from physical to digital at that time.
They just misread
buying digital.
Yeah.
They misread the market. They misread the industry. Yeah. Everyone knew it was going there, but they went too quick.
Ahead of everybody else, and Sony jumped on it. Sony, I guarantee, was already planning to do stuff very similar to what Microsoft announced. Sure. It's just they were like, Microsoft totally screwed up. We're just going to rip them to shreds, and they took advantage of that.
Microsoft basically pulled up a Sony with the PS3, because when PS3 came out, they were like so cocky, and they're like, hey,
that was the get a second job thing. Yeah.
Oh, so like Microsoft came out, trying to swing, and well, that didn't happen. So
and they whiffed. Yes. So 2013 was a pretty major year. Of course, those two systems launched within a week of each other in November, and the PS4 got out to such a head start, and they just never looked back. And of course, now they are in record-breaking status. That doesn't mean the Xbox One was a flop. It was not like Wii U style flop.
Very successful.
Very successful console. And we've talked about it a lot. It's right now my preferred place to play third party, but it wasn't until the X came out. I thought the original Xbox One was fine, but not that much better or different than the PS4. The X is what really got me.
Well, it was worse. So, I mean, like I bought it and I like it because it did have some exclusives that I like, right? I do like Microsoft exclusives. I think a lot of people do. They just
when they release them, they're great.
Yeah, they just don't have as many as Sony. But even me, going into this gen, I was obviously more excited for the Xbox One because I love my 360, and I'm super excited for Killer Instinct. But once I started doing research on all the third-party games, kind of like what Tim did with the One X now, same thing I'm doing when I play on consoles. If it's third-party, I get it on the One X. I don't bother with my PS4 Pro. It's usually not as powerful, and God, it sounds like a freaking jet.
No,
I'm so over it. So loud. But anyways, the Xbox One, once I did the research, I was like, I'm not, and this hurt my feels. Like I was upset I had to do this. I had all these PlayStation 4 games, and I'm like, but I'm an Xbox guy. And I bought them on the PS4 because everything was 1080p, and Xbox One was 720p. Might get the 900p, but I doubt it. And it was like,
but I doubt it.
But that was the way it was, and I always go that way. Whoever's better, I'm gonna go that way. But I've always said I prefer Xbox.
When
I'm American, baby.
When we look back at
Trump 2020, Microsoft, Xbox,
right.
let's go.
When we look back at the last two
Tim,
gens, I think it's obvious that the 360 had a head start on PS3 and demolished it for a majority of that time. Of course, PS3 ended up catching up, and just barely, but they did pass it. But I think you could make an argument that the PS3 was kind of the most improved console during that run. And this time around, I think it's Xbox One. I don't think they're not going to get close to the PS4 sales numbers. That's fine. But they have done such a good job at recovering from what was a pretty disastrous start. So right now, of course, we're talking 2013. The start was not great. Their launch was not amazing. But I think they recovered quite well to maintain their foothold in the industry. So
I think, and we don't have to talk about it long because we've got all this year to talk about it, but I really think the Series X has an opportunity to, they're not going to pass the PS5. I think PS5 is going to come out. I know we don't have any data or anything. So unless Sony comes out and they're like, PS5, $800. Get 3 jobs, guys. I really think they're going to do
second
fine.
Mortgage.
I think they're going to do fine. But I think that if the Series X can come out, if Microsoft can finally, I've been waiting like 6 years. if they can finally come out and say, hey, we're more than just Halo and Gears. Here's Fable 4. Here's 5 new IPs. Like, if they can just blow the doors off and just go, we have been holding back. You guys have been mocking us for the last 3 years. We've been intentionally holding back for this brand new console.
And here we go. Here's all the exclusives. And here's all the power.
I mean, this isn't a big deal, but like they never skip a year of Forza. Nobody talked about it. Forza didn't come out. Why?
It'll be out with launch.
They're all prepping it.
They'll be launching
held
with
back
it.
from everything.
Yeah, I'm excited for this year's E3. I hope that I know Sony will probably do a state of play video, Nintendo will do their direct, and then and Microsoft will have their press conference. Between those three, that I assume will all happen around that E3 mid-June date, I'm excited for what we're gonna learn. All right, so my favorite game from 2013, as I looked through it, there was a lot that I liked. I mentioned I love GTA 5, but I had to go with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. It's an absolute blast. I'm still loving my replay through on the Switch right now, and I really love Black Flag. So I think it was a great evolution for that series. I was bummed when the next step in the series went back to just cities. I mean, the good news is it was, I think the next year was Unity.
It was.
Yeah, I love
And they
Unity.
did Rogue. So I was a little disappointed that the main new console one was Unity. Of course, now that I finally have played it, I do like that game. Syndicate, of course, was the best, I think, city-only one that they made of that ilk. But AC4 Black Flag just holds a special place in my heart. I loved the pirate setting and the tropical, sailing from island to island and exploring. I just loved it.
4 was a good, like, kind of almost like FU to everybody because of 3.
Yes.
Because 3
Yeah.
just, like, did not, like, fans did not like 3.
Yeah, the modern
ending
day
was
stuff
terrible.
on 4
like,
is not amazing. They give you some interesting things to go around this office building and, break into people's computers and explore stuff. But for the
Yeah.
most part, I just want to be the pirate and do piratey
Well,
stuff. But,
like,
They
I've seen Jesse.
half-flooded that crap.
I've seen Jesse White post before. He's like, I actually like the modern day stuff, and then like other people are like, you're an idiot, and I'm like, no, I agree with Jesse. Like,
I agree with Jesse.
the thing is like the way that 3 ended just completely put them in a corner, and then they've been trying to like dig themselves out of that corner, and it's just all over the place.
Right.
It's just not. It's not connected in a fluid way. Like, there's potential there. They're just not.
Like they
really-
still use the same modern day characters. Well, they've kind of backed off from.
Well, those
they
people
for
that
a
were
while.
with Desmond, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they don't. Now they don't. They just kind of disappeared. Like I don't even know where they are. They don't even bring them into the games anymore.
yeah, there's not
It's
enough
kind of
continuity there.
stupid.
With Desmond, you had some continuity and it was interesting. But now,
And I'm cool with you. Or spoilers. Killing off Desmond. I'm cool with that. I thought that was cool.
but do it for a reason and then have some cool aftermath stuff. That
Boom.
Yes.
But they did that because of a bunch of whiners. They killed him off, and then they half but shoehorned in present day stuff. And it does, all it is basically present day stuff. You just walk around to get to see how the Assassin's Creed universe is connected. That's
By the
it.
way, they do
Like,
have
there's
some
nothing
the
else.
best thing about that is as you hack into certain computers, most of that's optional. You can find some really cool Easter eggs, whether it's for what ended up being upcoming AC games, which was cool. They had some cool teasers on games they were actually working on. But also just some stuff of like, I don't know if they'll ever make this, but they're talking about different time periods, like all over the place.
Yeah.
So some of that stuff was really cool. They had a lot of fun Easter eggs for, fans of the AC franchise. But that was my favorite. Derek, what did you like from 2013?
So this was a tough one. I don't think the whole year was good as far as amount of games, but it had the 2 games that from that generation were easily the best. And I ended up picking BioShock Infinite over The Last of Us.
How dare you?
BioShock Infinite is just I don't know. I've beat that game like 5 or 6 times, which I've beat The Last of Us 4 or 5 times.
Is it because there's always a lighthouse, Derek? Is it because of the lighthouse?
That's what it is.
There's always a lighthouse.
It's because I was trying to look up her skirt the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay, that makes sense then. Yep, no, that makes sense.
No, and whereas Ellie, that's not happening.
As a child, so
Well, she's not.
let's
even
not cross a
hot.
line. Let's not cross a line.
Let's not even talk about the child part. She's not hot.
Tim, just shut it down. Shut it down, Tim. Shut it down right now.
How many times you gotta censor me? By the way, folks, if you're listening to the show, Tim censored me last week, and I'm not happy about it. He cut out my Kobe Bryant joke. I made a funny Kobe Bryant death joke.
Here, let me
zombie
tell you
joke.
right now what it was.
No, we to be fair, that was before we had started recording. So
No, you
Yeah.
knew. You
Yeah.
knew you could add it. You didn't want to.
all right, so just tell us what your favorite game is. So we can move on.
Bioshock Infinite.
Oh, okay, good.
It's amazing. It's one of the greatest games ever.
Dan, I love that game. Dan.
All right. Well, Derek is wrong. One of the greatest games is Last of Us, obviously.
I
It's
already
a very
said it.
impactful,
Number 2, so shut up.
emotional ride of a man trying to protect
I cried like 27 times.
That's fine. I have a heart and a soul, and you don't, so that's okay.
Yeah, it was hard for me to pick between AC4, Last of Us, and GTA 5. Those were I loved all three of those.
AC4 again
So-
was a good return to something fun and
Either one of you like Grand Theft Auto 5 or did not really
Oh
do
yeah,
it for
no,
you?
for sure, absolutely.
I
mean,
like it, but I'm
what they
I'm not a Rockstar guy. They can
Okay.
suck.
I mean, like, but
All right.
switching between 3 characters, like that was insane.
Oh, all right. He said the fucking Rockstar.
All right. Now, last year that we'll go over for this week, and then we will move on to stuff we're playing and wrap up. But let's talk about 2014. I could not find any major consoles or tech that was released that year. So listeners or you two guys, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. I mean, the main console creators had just put out major hardware the year before. And that doesn't include Nintendo. The 2DS was at this point kind of hitting on all cylinders as well. So Nintendo was fully supporting that. They were at this point, I think it's fair to say, in total development and R&D mode for what ended up being the Switch. So they were supporting their portables. Wii U still had a couple of marquee games that were on the way. And so I think they were kind of on the quiet on the front of hardware. And of course, Microsoft and Sony didn't want to interrupt whatever momentum they each had with their consoles. So they just kept plowing ahead with their main consoles. So nothing major in terms of consoles and tech that year that I could find. Amazon's Game Studios and Tokyo RPG Factory both formed that year in 2014.
Nice.
I can think of games, of course, that Tokyo RPG Factory has made, but I can't think of anything Amazon Game Studios has made. I know they have made some.
They haven't made anything yet, but there was something recently that was announced that is from them. It's something Lord of the Rings related. I could be wrong.
Is that
but
the
I thought
one
they
with?
were the ones that took. There was a developer that made Killer Instinct, and I thought Amazon Games like bought them out. So then
They might have.
Microsoft had to find somebody else. So it's like weird that they never did anything because I don't think Amazon's ever made a game.
Yeah, so those were the two notable companies that came to mind. There's a bunch of closures as well. We'll get to those. Some of the new franchises that came out that year, 2014. Destiny dropped in 2014.
Oh,
The Evil Within dropped in 2014. Titanfall dropped in 2014. And I know Lord of the Rings is not a new franchise. I get it. But Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor to me felt like a new franchise set in that universe. So I put that in there. If for no other reason, I just want to talk again about the Nemesis system. It's one of the coolest things. So
I consider it new.
Yeah, it's a
nobody
new
had ever
franchise.
made that game.
yeah, it's a new franchise. Just like I would consider, for example, the recent Star Wars Fallen Order thing. That's a new franchise set in the Star Wars universe. in my
Yeah,
mind.
if they make a sequel. Yeah.
Assuming they make a sequel. Highest
They
scored
will.
game of 2014 that I could find, at least, that wasn't a re-release. So Last of Us and Grand Theft Auto 5 both had re-releases that year, whether it was to new consoles or the remastered version of Last of Us. But as far as new games go, it was Super Smash Bros. Wii U that got the highest cumulative score that I could find.
Damn
It was a
right.
little lower than previous years. Previous years it was 96 and 97s, but in 2014 the highest one I could find was 92, and that was Super Smash Bros. Wii U. The first year that the Game Awards, which used to be the Spike Video Game Awards or whatever, now officially the Game Awards, this is the first year they launched those, and you guys will both be happy to know, of course, the winner that year was Dragon Age Inquisition.
Obviously.
Was the best game of 2014 for the Game Awards. MLB 2K was discontinued in 2014. So I think since then we've only had the show since
That's
then.
true. That's true.
PlayStation Now was announced early on in 2014. I'm not sure exactly when it launched. I think it might have been the next year. I can't remember. But PlayStation Now was announced in 2014.
Well, they bought that they bought that company that I'm assuming
That did
helped
some
them build it.
streaming, right?
Yeah, I can't remember
Yeah.
their name right now, but
Yep. So they announced their plans for PlayStation Now, at least. Microsoft acquired Mahjong Studio that year, and of course decided to continue releasing Minecraft and supporting it and updating it and releasing DLC across all these other platforms. That was the first time we were like, oh, Microsoft is going to play nice. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But they acquired Mahjong, as well as they acquired the Gears franchise from Epic Games. I had completely forgotten that they didn't own the Gears franchise, but they acquired full rights to the Gears franchise at that point. And of course, we know assigned it to Coalition to take on from there. Derek, I'm sorry to say this is the year that Irrational Games Studio shut down. The year after BioShock Infinite came out, Irrational went bye-bye.
I'll survive.
I know
I
you
actually don't need it. I know they're planning on releasing another BioShock. I don't think they need to.
With 2K, yeah. I mean, it's a big series. It's like a popular series, so
They'll release another entry in it. Facebook acquired Oculus VR that year as well. So a lot of acquisitions going on in 2014. It feels like everyone was kind of, it was like a lot of pieces being moved around the board without any actual like attacks or whatever happening. If you think of like a strategy game, they were just getting themselves into position, all these different acquisitions and things like that. So,
yep.
So Nordic, for example, they acquired the THQ publishing rights. And so now, of course, we know THQ Nordic releases those and other games. And I think they're doing quite well for themselves. Activision revived Sierra Entertainment. They acquired those rights and revived it to create the new King's Quest. And I'm sure they've done a few other things I'm not aware of, but they definitely did King's Quest. Brought Sierra back from the dead. EA Access launched on the Xbox One that year as well. And so those of you who had EA Access, you could get early access to, of course, their EA Sports lineup, as well as some other EA games.
Dragon Age.
Like Dragon Age. I believe you could get access to that early that year.
That's why I bought it.
That E3 was a pretty major one. Not only did you have games like Crackdown 3 announced, we only had to wait 5 years for that one.
Sure.
You also had Bloodborne announced, which you only had to wait 1 year for. And then you had Uncharted 4 announced, which you had to wait 2 years for.
Yeah.
So those are both announced. It's all on the same E3. And on the Nintendo side, they announced and kind of showed a teaser of the next Zelda for Wii U, which of course eventually became Breath of the Wild for both Wii U and Switch. And then Mario Maker and a few other Nintendos. So Nintendo had a pretty awesome E3 as well in terms of here's what we're doing with the Wii U.
Still weren't selling well, but
they weren't. But I mean, they put out some great games for that thing. They really did. So anything jump out at you guys? 2014? Anything that I missed? And it was a pretty big year, but
they released Dragon Age Inquisition. You know, that game that the Fallen Order should copy. They released that. So
yeah. Boy, do I wish those games were more alike.
So yeah, that was an excellent game.
Yep.
I had a shout out for. Did I have a shout out for something? Nah, I'm not thinking of it, but yeah, that definitely was my favorite of that year. Oh, okay. And Smash Brothers, of course. I mean, because Smash being released on any Nintendo, that's going to be one of the best games. So
yeah, and I think so that came out at the end of 2013, but it kind of felt like a 2014 game, right?
Yeah, and I mean, people still.
Oh no, that was. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. That was 2014. My bad.
It was 2014, yeah.
Yeah,
but people were still into Melee, which was the GameCube version, more than the Wii U version. But I liked the added characters to the Wii U version, so to me it actually was a superior version. But...
What was the Wii one? Was that Brawl?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So Brawl was Wii. What was Wii U then?
It was just Super Smash Brothers.
Was it? I thought it
did. It's out on the Switch now.
And then they did Super Smash Brothers.
It's not the same, Derek.
Same damn thing. They just added more.
You could say that about every single one.
Isn't the new one called like Ultimate? I don't know. Whatever. Yes. All right.
It's a port, mother fudger.
It was a pretty big year for announcements, and I think as we'll discover next week when we dive into 2015, the stuff that was.
Ask me what my favorite game was, you jerk.
I know we're gonna get to that. I haven't shared mine either. So 2013 and especially 2014, I think you saw all these companies with acquisitions, and they're making certain announcements, really positioning themselves to deliver over the next 5 years, but especially the next 4 years, just incredible games the next 4 years. So as we go through 2015, 16, 17, 18 especially, you see the fruits of all these moves that we just talked about. And I'm hopeful that since we've seen a lot of moves in the last year and a half or so by people like Microsoft, like Derek said, I'm feeling optimistic that we're about to have a couple years of plenty ahead of us as well. Derek, what did you like from 2014?
It's going to shock everybody in this.
Yeah, hit me with it.
recording.
Because you never do anything
It's-
shocking.
Dragon Age Inquisition.
Tell me about this game. Is this an indie game? What is this?
Yeah, but being serious, like that was okay. So we just started like the new generation. So it 2013, like late 2013 is when we started new generation.
Right.
I remember like being so hyped for this game because I was
Yeah.
like dying for an open world RPG.
Yep.
Like a next
Something
gen
I'd
open
never
world
experienced
RPG, right?
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, I bought Bound by Flames.
Mm-hmm.
My boys gotta represent
Your
Greedfall, Bound by Flames. So I bought Bound by Flames, and
It's like
it's
a bad
pretty,
metal
it was
band.
pretty good, but it was bad. But it was pretty good, bad. But I
It does
bought
sound like a
because
really
I was
bad garage band name.
Bound by Flames.
Bound by Flames.
But so anyways, I bought that game because I was so excited for Dragon Age, and I was just so hungry for an RPG. And I just remember for like probably 3 to 6 months, I would come home from work, turn on YouTube, and I would just watch Dragon Age Inquisition videos. Like that is probably the last game where I just sat there and just was like, I want to be in this world so bad. Like I would just sit there and watch this gameplay and be like, this is gonna be the greatest game ever.
Well, especially
And while
after
it-
2, right? Because I mean, not that 2 was like horrendous
liked
or
it.
anything, but
I
like it
loved
had
2.
problems. It had problems.
I understand that, but it was still fun. It was a lot of fun. I just think Dragon Age Inquisitions was the start of.
Yeah.
I guess this is my point. It was the start of next gen for me as far as
Yeah, that
finally
makes
getting
sense.
the game that I wanted. And
Yeah.
while it's not going to end up being like my game of this generation, it's still one of my favorites. In fact, after we get off the show, I'm just going to boot it up on PC. And
Just because
stuff.
we're talking about it, you're like, I love this game. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Dan, was that yours for 2014? Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I would say that was definitely the first one that I was like, oh, okay. I feel like I'm playing something that's
You would think with
on
two
this
of your
at some
co-hosts praising this game and the fact that you like The Witcher and so you would think
Yeah.
that the other guy on this show would grow a brain, because clearly he doesn't have one, and be like, hey, I should probably like really invest time in Dragon Age. And
I've
mean,
given
not
that game
play
2-3
for-
hours of
no.
my time, and it hasn't done
No,
it.
It's
for
not
me.
enough,
2 or 3
Tim.
hours
It's not
is
enough.
dumb as freak. Just like I don't respect you and Jesse White's opinion on Greedfall, because I know
jeez.
damn well you guys have only played it like for like 30 or 40 minutes. And
You're
like,
right.
"Hey,
You are
fuck."
correct about that one. That is true.
Play it longer. Get 3 or 4 hours in. Get into the island. Same thing with Dragon Age. Explore the world a little bit. Fight a dragon. How about you fight a dragon? Get your butt whipped.
And then
And
you're
then-
gonna be like, I wish this was like a Star Wars game. I wish I'd just take these elements and put them in a Star.
Or I wish they would be more like Star Wars Fallen Order. If they would have made their maps more like the awesome and perfect maps of Star Wars. All right, so my
Okay.
favorite game of that year, it kind of came down to 2. And the only reason I didn't pick Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor is because I think Shadow of War is like the improvement on that. This is me looking back at it. Maybe in 2014 I would have picked Shadow of Mordor. Maybe.
Yeah.
But now I think Shadow of War kind of perfected that formula and just absolutely killed it. So my favorite from that year was the reboot of Wolfenstein in the New Order. So
Oh yeah.
I absolutely loved that game. I thought it was a blast to play. Super tough, but a great story, surprisingly like interesting and compelling. And I was not expecting that from a Wolfenstein game reboot. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I think I did enjoy 2 a little more, but this one was just so surprising with how cool it was and how much I enjoyed it that I had to pick that one.
Yeah, shout out to that too.
Yeah, great game. Now, if we could count remasters and stuff, I probably would have picked, because that's, to me, 2014. I know this sounds weird, but to me, that's when Last of Us came out, because that was the
Right,
remastered
right.
version, and that's when I played it. So that was probably my favorite game I played that year, Last of Us, even though I didn't finish it till much later. But I'll give it to Wolfenstein. Give it that little bit of love there. So there you go. There's the first half of the teens, basically. If you count
I'm
20.
gonna say, while this was semi-difficult, this next 5 years we're gonna like on the next show is gonna
Yeah.
be way harder.
Oh yeah,
Pretty
crazy.
like I said,
We're gonna
the-
see like if people that listen to our show, you know, if they start hearing how we're talking about these games and they start going and doing the research we did and go through each year starting with 2010 and go through 2019, you'll be blown away by not only how many great games there are every year, but how big of a difference it is from this latter 5 years to the first 5 years.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
crazy.
Like, not that there were by any means bad games on the last gen, but like this gen definitely beats the last gen, right? Like for
Well,
sure.
It's just because sales. I think video games has become bigger than, like, grossing wise, bigger than movies, and so many companies are investing in video games now that we're just we talk about, like, right now is a great example. There's no real games I want in January and February of this year. That's a low for me, right?
Yeah.
We probably don't remember, but go back 8 or 9 years, I could go 3 or 4 months. And this is coming from a guy who
Like
bought
half
a
a
lot
year.
of games.
You could go like a
You could
good
go
chunk
3 or
of the
4
year.
months
Yeah.
and be like,
Yeah.
well, there's nothing really, like, I'm dying to play.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the how much money they're making. Did you guys see the NPD list of the last 10 years? So everyone's doing like the last decade.
Grand Theft Auto and then a bunch
It's
of Call of Duties.
It's basically all Activision and Rockstar.
Rockstar,
With
yeah.
I think Minecraft is the one blip in that
Yeah,
top
yeah.
10.
Yeah.
I
think
don't
Minecraft is
understand
on there.
with Activision making such a killing on Call of Duty. I'm totally fine with them playing it safe because that's their baby, right? What I don't understand is why don't they invest more in, like, new IP?
Yeah, why
Because
don't they have
obviously money?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that's the thing. They don't want to invest in something unless they can sequelize it. They need to have
But
sequels
the
for whatever
ROI
it
on
is.
Call of Duty has got to be so high because they can reuse so much from those.
Sure.
So it's got to be so high. Yeah, I'm with you. I'd love to see them do what we've talked about this a lot. Respawn and Guerrilla Games have done. Spin off a section of your team to work on that very creative open world, just a new setting, and blow us away with some kind
Even
of
if you want to
open world RPG.
like mainline Call of Duty game, right? And
Yeah.
then you, like Tim just said, all right, let's create this, like, special ops team that's going to make this open world Call of Duty game or something. Like, we're going to change the
great,
way
yeah.
we play Call of Duty.
Yeah.
We're not going to make it a
Third
linear
person
game. We're going to
Call of
let you
Yeah.
we're going to let you pick how missions play out, and we're going to make it open. You've got to get
And
the
really
intel.
character centric. Take some of the strengths of the recent Modern Warfare, for example, and
Yeah.
double down on that with a lot of character stuff. And yeah, that could be really.
We're not
really
even gonna
cool.
we're even focus on multiplayer. We're gonna just focus on single player, or maybe have a co-op mode or something like that, so they can try to draw in.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah,
add
but
a lot
you
of-
see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
you have all that money. I
Add
don't
some
understand.
skill trees and more
What
loot
if,
and things like
what
that.
if they did like a Call of Duty, the newer one, mixed with like Ghost Recon Wildlands? That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be
I
something like that would be cool. Yep.
Yeah.
So all right, so we will tackle the second half of the 2010s. And by the way, I am splitting it up from 2010 to 2019. I know it feels kind of weird because it's not whatever. People like to go from 1 to 10, but it is what it is. I'm just going based on the numbers here, folks. So we will cover the second half of that next week. For now, real quick, before we sign off, anything you guys are playing that you want to highlight and talk about real quick?
I think I covered everything last show. I talked about VR. We talked about a journey to Savage Planet a little bit. Didn't I? No,
You
that
know-
just came out.
No.
You haven't talked about that one. Is it worth playing? You recommend it to folks?
Yeah, I think keep in mind when I talk about this game, because not everybody does research. This is not a $60 game; it's a $30 game. It's over the top, like humor wise, which I appreciate. But I think I like it. The shooting's good. It's gonna be a kind of a game I probably don't play much, just because I don't like the fact that it's all built around puzzles.
Okay.
Like you're basically exploring the planet. You're well, now I'm forgetting what it is. You do it almost in every game now, where you scan the environments.
Oh,
So
okay.
all you're doing is scanning to get.
Yeah, I've heard
material.
there's some Metroid Prime love in this game. Like people, like there's something about some similarities. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, you're scanning to basically your ship's broke. You landed on this planet. You're all screwed up. You have nothing, and that's like the intros. They tell you, "Hey, we're the 4th leading space, blah blah blah." And by the way, we spent so much money to get you to this planet, we can't afford to get you back, and we gave you no equipment. So your ship's wrecked. You have no equipment, and so basically you have to go out on this planet, explore, scan, grab stuff, bring it back to your ship, build new things. Like when you first start the game, you don't have a gun. So the very first thing you do is you build a gun.
That sounds pretty
And
cool.
I like it so far.
I'm kind of digging the premise that you're describing.
I think you guys would like it more than me.
Okay.
But I would say, as somebody who's not really into these type of games, so far it's pretty good.
You appreciate what it's doing, even if it's not something you're gonna keep
like
playing.
I don't think I'm gonna hate on it or anything.
Anything else other than VR stuff, or is that pretty much it for this week?
I think that's it. I mean, I've been playing Rocket League consistently still, and
Sure.
as far as PC gaming,
No one asked about
I
that.
don't
No
know.
one cares about that. No one wants to hear about your PC game.
well, it's gonna be Dragon Age Inquisition.
Talk about Rocket
baby.
League more.
Freitas, what are you playing?
Trying to jump back into Division 2.
Oh,
Okay, well, since we bought it on PlayStation, we should actually play it maybe sometime eventually.
Well, you got me tonight. I'm wide awake, baby.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I
Sounds
was gonna
kinda
say
dirty.
yeah, that's inappropriate.
Oh no.
No, censor. Please censor all of that. I think I'm in the last couple of hours of Sekiro. I could be wrong, but
Oh, good job, dude. That's great.
I finished without spoiling. There's a certain individual that you fight that you knew as a child.
Yeah.
Do you
I
know who I'm getting at? Okay.
I know who.
So I just fought that person. So now I'm in the where is it, the otherworldly type of area that you go.
Are
You're supposed to
you
go.
playing this because you're still really having fun, or are you at the point now where you're like, I'm determined to finish this thing?
No, it's at this point it's just about it not beating me because it's super.
You seem to be going through it pretty good though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're killing it. That's great.
I'm very stressed out though. it's a very.
You're gonna need Animal Crossing to release right after you're done with this one, so you can relax.
Well, it's funny because it's like then the antithesis of that would be like a Stardew Valley, right? Which is what my wife and I have been replaying. Because
I
they'd
love that
had
game.
yeah.
So
Well,
fun.
they released an update with some additional content, like just
Yeah.
a little bit of extra stuff. So we just kind of went back to that just to replay it because we did love it. So
Yeah, so fun.
yeah. So it's a
Nice.
balance. Yeah.
Nice. So I told you guys about the board game Seven Wonders. I play. It's kind of like Civilization, the board game. I actually grabbed the iOS app for it. It's like $5,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm really enjoying that.
How does that work? Because you said it's an actual board game, right?
It is. It's just the digital version of it. If you guys have ever played like
Oh,
Ticket
okay.
to Ride or Catan or Carcassonne, you can play against AI bots or you can play against folks online. Either way.
Interesting.
So I think Seven Wonders is great. If you like board games, card games, if you like stuff like Catan or Settlers of Catan, or whatever, if the idea of it intrigues you, I suggest give it a shot. It's pretty fun. But as far as video games go, I did finish Stranger Things 3. It can be a little frustrating. Some of the puzzles are a little bit obtuse, but if you like classic old games, I just think this game was fun. Took me about 8 hours, and I did almost all the side stuff. Not a super long game, but certain parts of it were like, what is this puzzle? So to their credit, they made it challenging enough, but also easy enough that I didn't get super stuck. So I like that. I liked it a lot. I started Judgment. I'm about an hour or two into Judgment on the PS4. It's really cool, really stylish. The combat is pretty fun so far, and I know there's a lot more that they're going to unlock as time goes on. Some of the sequences they have, like identifying the perp and then chasing the perp, some of the what are essentially kind of mini games, are pretty cool because you're this private eye basically who used to be a lawyer, and now you're a private eye, and as you spot the person you're trying to track down, this is very early in the game that you teach you how to do this. There's certain things you need to look for to identify if it's them, and then when you go to chase them, they give you essentially a series of running and then quick time button actions to make sure that you catch up to them, and then the combat is very I'm trying to think how to describe it. There's counters are a big deal. Using the environment's a big deal. You can throw them around. You can jump off the wall and do a big hit. You can build up a meter that then lets you do kind of a powerful attack. It's not groundbreaking, but it's fun. It's fun.
Well,
and
it's akin to the Yakuza games, right?
Well, which I never played.
They're brawlers. Yeah,
Which
3D
I never played
brawlers,
those.
right?
But I think there's enough complexity to the combat that I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. I could see this being intriguing throughout. And the storylines hasn't really grabbed me yet. There's a little bit of a thing that recently happened that I was like, oh, okay, I see how they're trying to pull me in. But
Well,
overall, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say because I played the demo and like just like that part with like the fire and all that.
Yeah.
Like
Uh-huh.
I was like, even that just grabbed me. Like just that one moment, I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm pretty interested in this.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a mystery at play, and the characters are interesting. And I'm doing Japanese audio with English subtitles because not only does it match up with the mouse a lot more, I'm enjoying it because the setting. Obviously it's
right.
set.
And it just sounds more dramatic and powerful because
It
like
does.
the Japanese
Yeah.
voice acting is just so like over the top. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm digging Judgment so far. I'm going to keep playing that one. Also started up Final Fantasy VIII on the Switch since it was on sale with the Square
Yeah.
sale, and yeah, I like Final Fantasy VIII.
that intro, Tim. That intro.
The intro is one of the best.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
whole
yeah.
thing with you and is it pronounced Cipher or Cipher?
I think it's Cypher.
Okay.
I believe it's
That battle with those two at the beginning is really cool, but
yeah.
relearning, kind of being reminded, oh, this is how you do the junction system. That was pretty cool. And then we talked about Triple Triad, the card game. That's pretty fun. So
the better card game, yes.
it is a good card game. It's a better card
Yeah.
game than probably most of the other ones.
Tetramaster,
Yeah.
which is the one from 9.
I love 9 as a game more than 8, but I like the card game in 8 more. So
Yes.
all right, so that's it. I'll let you guys go. I'll stop talking about games right now. We'll talk to you guys next week about 2015 through this past year, about
Indeed.
how the last decade went. So Derek and Dan, thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you
Thank
guys
you.
next time. Peace.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?